All right, Friday, March 27th, we are ready for the events in Cleveland's first presidency. I have his picture there. These are two things from the websites I told you about the other day. OurWhiteHouse.org, I believe, and then is the cartoony picture. And the one with the card is from periodic presidents. And so they've done like a periodic table, like you do the elements on, and they have put all of the presidents on it. So he's 22, and then they've got a plus one because he has another term. And then they've got the $1,000 on there because he's on the $1,000 bill. And then they have the terms of his presidency, his initials, or the years of his presidency, his initials, and his number. So I thought those are cool, and I'm going to be trying to put those up for the other ones too. But you can get on that site and find all kinds of neat infographics that go along with the different presidents. Okay, now we talked about yesterday how he sees himself as a watchdog or a watchguard over the government. He actually thought that Americans should be very suspicious of the government. He did not think that we should just depend on the government and trust them to do whatever they were going to do. It's okay, go ahead. He thought that Americans should be careful, that they should be watchful, that they should be suspicious of the government and make sure that the government is guarding their rights and money and everything well. So we talked about how he was known for vetoing so many different things, that he vetoed more than twice all of the presidents before him combined. And so he was using his presidential power of the veto to protect the people. And what he was doing a lot was protecting their money. He was very careful with, and I told you even yesterday that he was careful even with his own personal expenses. So I think I have been wrong in the past. Because I saw that he was a hands-off government, I think I kind of thought that meant that he was real laid back and didn't really do a lot. And I read something that said he was the last of the laid back presidents, but I don't see him as a laid back president. He worked harder than anyone, anyone that's hardly been in office, and he was there. He didn't even have a secretary for the first few months. He would be known to answer the White House phone. So this is not a laid back person. He worked till 1 or 2 in the morning. This is a hard working person. So I wanted to give you an idea of some of the things he was vetoing. So one thing, and these two things specifically were things that aggravated the public, that when the public found out, they were upset about these things. One was that after there was a horrible drought in Texas, there was actually a bill that was very popular and a lot of people were in favor of, to give free seed to farmers in Texas. And Cleveland vetoed it because, like this last quote that I have on here, he did not believe that the government should just be giving the people things, and that because he was afraid that they would become dependent upon the government instead of working on their own. And there is a balance. There is a balance that you have to find. But that's the main difference between our parties now, Republican and Democrat, is how much aid, help that the government gives to the people. Okay, so another one is that he vetoed pension bills for CW. What do I mean by that? Do you know? Civil War veterans. So people who'd served in the Civil War. A pension is money you get after your service in lots of different things, but here specifically it's the military and in this war. So there were a lot of Civil War veterans who were injured. Well, here's the thing though. There were a lot of people, and there were a lot of people taking advantage of veterans too and saying, oh, you should be getting money. Let me represent your case. Let me send a request for a pension to the White House. And they might be asking for money for an injury that occurred after the war that didn't have anything to do with the war. that was even a result of their own bad living and bad choices. So, and they actually came, all of these requests came individually. And Cleveland actually read each, he aggravated many people because he read them individually and then decided on each one whether he believed it was, and the word I use here is valid, meaning was it true, was it something that really needed assistance or did not. And he looked at each case and then decided. That, to me, does not seem like a laid back president. Seems like a very involved one. Okay, now here is legislation that was passed or encouraged. So if we see such a laid back president that is not getting so involved and is stopping a lot of bills from happening, then we should really be paying attention to what exactly did he pass. Okay, so what was he in favor of? All right, and here's a few things. One was the Interstate Commerce Act. It was to ensure that the there's railroad charged reasonable and just rates. So what happened was the railroad was owned by private companies. And so the railroad is being used more and more and more, and there's not very many of them. So if you own a railroad and you've got all these people coming on your railroad and you know that you don't have any competition, what might you do to your prices? You might say, I've been charging $5, but you know what? I could charge $7 and no one's going to say anything. And then the prices go up and up and up and up and up, and then nobody can ride the train, and it is not the service that was actually needed to the country. So they passed this act that actually created the first, it's called a regulatory group that looks over something and makes sure that it's regulated, that you can't go past this amount or you can't do this. It's actually controlled in some ways by the government. And I love that that is something that he passed because that is protecting the Americans, isn't it? We see him doing one of the bills that he actually passes is protecting the people. Now the next one is called the Dawes Severalty Act of 1887, and this actually granted citizenship to Indians that renounced their membership in their tribe and decided that they would take on the white man's ways, and it actually gave them land to homestead so that they could build their own house, they could have their own land, they could grow crops, they could make a living out of their own land. And this bill was brought on by a book, and I just found this out today. This was so cool. By a book written by a lady named Helen Hunt Jackson, and she wrote a book called A Century of Dishonour, and it was about the Americans' poor treatment of the Native Americans. And don't worry, I did tell Emma she would be really excited about this. So she brought attention. She also wrote another book called Ramona that was a nonfiction book that she hoped did a lot like Uncle Tom's Cabin did for the slaves. She wanted attention brought to the circumstances of the Native Americans and how they were treated. So she died, though, in 1885. This was passed after that. So she didn't even know that all of her hard work did go for them trying to do something. But look at this law. Do you see some problems with this? This law actually did more harm than good because it wasn't recognizing them as people that had their own culture and their own ways. Just because we might have more doesn't mean that we're better. And we were saying, you need to be like us. Okay, we'll give you land. Well, what did the Indians do with land before? They never owned land. Their beliefs said that people couldn't own land. So guess what this opened up? This opened up the ability for people to come in and take advantage of them because they didn't know what land was valued because they never thought that you could own land. So people trying to take advantage of them would come in and say, oh, you've got a good piece of property here. I'll give you $10 for it. Wow, really? Okay. And a lot of Indians actually wound up losing their homestead land because of people who were taking advantage of them because of the different beliefs of land and land ownership between the white people and the Native Americans. So this was meant, I sincerely believe it was meant to be a helpful thing, but it wound up backfiring just because of our lack of understanding that being different doesn't mean that you're bad. Not everyone has to do everything the same way. And by making them do things the same way, we messed them up. Okay, this was actually something he wanted to happen, but Congress wouldn't agree to. He challenged Congress to lower tariff rates. Now remember, tariffs are taxes put on goods coming in and out of the country, mostly coming in. And tariffs increase the price of goods. So now it increased the price of goods coming from other countries. So if you were making products here, you actually had a little bit more room to move your price up, and you made more money because their tariff rates were high. If their tariff rates are low, American makers can't make as much money either because they can't raise their prices as high. Do you understand? So big business did not like this. They were like, oh, no, we don't want to lower tariffs. And congressmen didn't like this because the extra money that their states were earning was going toward personal projects in their state that they wanted money to go towards. So they benefited from the extra money, and the big business benefited from the extra money. And what did I say about big business? They have the opportunity now to sponsor political parties. And so because they have a little bit of say now, because of the Pendleton Act that Arthur passed, then now Congress is stopped and they're not going to do anything on tariff rates. Now this is something I thought was cool too, because this is something Cleveland wanted to do, and what does it show? Protecting the people. Again, more and more the things he wants to do are actually protecting the people, not making the people do more things or imposing more things upon them, but protecting them. And that's what he felt like his job was. And I do think he did a good job of it. Meanwhile, in the United States, this is what's going on. The American Federation of Labor, the AFL, is started to help workers. This is a union of unions, basically. And this is unions that stand up for the rights of workers. Now, we're going to see this as a good thing, but we're going to see this also causes strikes, also causes more violence. It causes arguments and controversy that we talked about the other day as our vocabulary word. So this sounds good on the outside, but it's another kind of double-sided coin. In 1886, Statue of Liberty, finally, we've been talking about this. The United States had been trying to get this statue for 10 years, but it needed a base. We didn't have enough money to get a base. Joseph Pulitzer, who owned the World at the time, he didn't own the World, he owned the publication, and he put out an article in the newspaper and basically said, we want this statue to represent our friendship with France when we became a country, and if you have anything, 50 cents, $1, send it in and we're going to get this paid for. And he started this huge campaign program, and people all over the United States started sending in their dollars and extra change so that this could be built. So we had a pedestal. The Statue of Liberty arrives in over 300 different pieces. It takes 4 months to reassemble it and put it back together and get it all ready. And then in 1886, Grover Cleveland dedicates the statue. Another Indian event, Geronimo surrenders when he hears of Sitting Bull coming back. This is when he hears of Sitting Bull. I think his exile. Geronimo surrenders and is promised he could return to Arizona after he was exiled for a short bit to Florida. So this is like to get him away so that he doesn't cause any problems. So he was sent away. This is another broken promise. He was never allowed to come back to Arizona. And then we have the first Indian National Congress. This is not something I know a whole lot of information about, but it is an important event that I want us to put on the timeline. If you'd like to find out more information about it, please do some research on it and let me know what you find out. Coca-Cola is invented as a health drink. Doesn't become nationally popular, though, until about 1900. So they started it. They thought it was going to be kind of like a health tonic. Then it gets popularized as just a drink, and it goes to several different hands, like different people buy it off of other people, and then eventually it becomes more popular in about 1900. But I don't know if you knew that it's been around that long. That's kind of interesting, huh? And how something starts as one thing and can change over time and develop. And that's fine. That's absolutely okay. And I'm glad that things happen that way. Okay. I don't have a question for you today. I do want you to let me know if you're finding out anything else. I would like to know if you're finding out any more information of what's going on in these early 1880s. Then you can, or late, right, 85 to 89, so late 1880s. And let me know if you find out anything more about that. If not, just put in the comments below that you saw this, you read about it. Tell me something that you found interesting, though. Tell me the thing that you liked the best out of this lecture. Okay,